this sermon, it's not as much about what you do. Like they already knew what to do. Like the Pharisees had drilled that into their heads, right? It's about how you do it.
Yeah, namely with all your heart and your soul, like we were just talking about.
Yeah, and it even ends. I mean, one of the cool things about the sermon that he pulls it all together at the end with the parable about the building of your house on the sand or the stone.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, right there, he's saying it's about how you do it.
It's the Sermon on the Mount, and you build your house on the mount / on the on the rock.
Right. Yeah. Welcome to Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. I'm Timothy.
And I'm Caleb.
And you're listening to Bible Discussions, the forum where we explore biblical topics that are relevant to your life. Today we are continuing our series entitled The Life of Christ. And in this part 24 of that series, we're going to look at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, our introduction to the Sermon on the Mount. So a little bit of housekeeping. I'm changing the name to part 24. It's been episode 24, and it's been really super confusing because we have Bible Discussions episode whatever, and then you have Life of Christ episode whatever. So we're doing Life of Christ part 24, just to make that a little clearer in the future. Okay, so back to the Sermon on the Mount. It is nearly impossible to do a proper introduction to the Sermon on the Mount, and probably no one wants to hear me do that. But I mean, I think part of the reason it's hard is because it's simultaneously brief and it's broad, and it's simultaneously simple and profound. And I don't know, when I say it's brief, it's like 3 chapters, but in the Bible, which isn't very much, you can read it in not very long. It's probably shorter if you read it than any sermon I've ever preached.
Yeah, but you spend your entire life meditating on it.
Yeah.
And then you find at the end of your life, you still can't put it all into practice the right way.
No, I think that's true. I'm not going to talk much about church fathers or anything, but Augustine had said about the Sermon on the Mount, that it was what you just said, the instructions on how to live your life. And I think, you could probably lose most of the New Testament and still have the Sermon on the Mount and have a pretty good instruction guide for life.
Yeah, as far as like Christian morals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's comprehensive in that sense. In a lot
it's
of
like
ways.
We've talked about this before. What Chesterton says, that he'd rather write an entire article for a newspaper than a catchy one-liner.
Yeah,
it's like that's harder. If you have to, that's why it's brief but broad. Mm-hmm. And it's like Jesus packs literally more than you can learn in your entire life into 3 chapters.
Yeah.
Of the Bible, and
you could probably learn it, but you couldn't.
Like, I'd rather just write a systematic theology, honestly. It'd be a lot easier to do that.
You could learn it, but then you have to put it into practice. That's the part. Oh, I have to actually do what it says?
Yeah.
But anyway, well, rather than listening to the two of us go on about that, let's see how Matthew introduces the Sermon on the Mount, because I think it's instructive for our understanding of the entire body of the sermon to see what's going on in the life of Christ, which is the value of doing it this way. We've been working through the early part of Jesus' ministry, and now, see, this is really how Matthew starts. He chooses the disciples, and then, boom.
The public ministry, yeah.
Yeah. And so let's look at this in Matthew 4, verses 23 through chapter 5, verse 2.
Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. News about him spread all over Syria, and people brought to him all who were ill with various diseases, those suffering severe pain, the demon-possessed, those having seizures, and the paralyzed, and he healed them. Large crowds from Galilee, the Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, and the region across the Jordan followed him. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them.
So look at the big setup here by Matthew. Just that last sentence, by the way, Jesus went up on a mountain. Mm-hmm. It's the echo of Moses, right? Moses going up on the mountain, bringing the message down. But that wasn't really the setup I was going to say. But the big setup, though, that he does here is it's just like we've seen in the other Gospels in the last few weeks that we've been looking at. Jesus starts out teaching in synagogues. And you remember, he said, that's why I've come, right? We've seen that in Mark 1 when he started healing people there. And all they wanted was heal me more. And Jesus is like, let's get out of here and go somewhere else so I can preach, because that's why I've come.
Well, that's what caught my eye about the whole passage. You read all that. It says, now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. And the point being, he began to teach them. It's like, he's like, oh, okay, all the people finally showed up. Like, he's been doing healings and stuff, which kind of garners the attention. And then his point, some people have in mind that the Messiah is going to gather people and overthrow the Romans. And he's like, all right, now it's time to preach a sermon.
Yeah. Well, and we see today modern preachers who build fantastical, TV ministries and have a big building
or social media nowadays.
Use auditoriums and things, to have big rallies. And Jesus is using a mountain.
Well, I mean,
so many people.
Yeah, they wouldn't have fit in a synagogue anymore.
Right.
Whether he wanted to or not. Even before, like, he's teaching in a home and people are cutting the roof open to get into him.
Yes, and last week we talked about how Jesus had said, actually later in Matthew, he says, something greater than the temple is here. And so now you see, well, something greater than the synagogues here too, because this wouldn't fit in a synagogue.
Yeah.
And so it's an amazing explosion of interest in Jesus. For that time, it's crazy how well publicized he was. Just reading through this thing, that people were coming from this huge geographical area. Like when it just says Syria, that could be like 30,000 square miles right there, 30 to 40.
Yeah.
But Galilee was 1,000 to 1,500 square miles. The Decapolis, which was mentioned, was 1,000 square miles. Judea was 2,000 square miles, and the Transjordan was another 1,000 square miles. So, I mean, even if you added all that up, you would have like 35,000 to 40,000 square miles.
Yeah.
And that is roughly the size of Indiana on the small side, and around Tennessee on the big side.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's smaller, if maybe it doesn't include all of Syria, it's still thousands of square miles. And like the Decapolis, which means the 10 cities, like some of these areas are densely populated.
Yeah. And so why are people coming from such a broad area to come? Why all the interest in Jesus, right? It's because they have problems that only Jesus can solve.
That's what he's been doing, like with healings and casting out demons and things.
Yeah. Here it mentioned too, like chronic and severe pain. I mean, you see commercials on TV, right? Like, come to my pain clinic. It's like
buy this drug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Charlatans that have been shut down here. We're in Tennessee. We've had a big problem with people prescribing drug mills for pain pills. And then it mentions seizures and paralysis, right? Things like mysterious things that they had no way of dealing with back then. Even now we have some medications that can help people with their seizures and things. But paralysis, I mean, we're very limited on what we can do with paralysis even today.
But Jesus knows that there's a bigger problem that only he can solve.
Yeah.
And like we've seen this, like I would just referenced earlier, where the man's lowered down on the mat, and he gets confronted by the Pharisees there because the first thing he says to the guy is, "Your sins are forgiven."
Right. Yeah.
That's more important than his legs being healed is his soul.
Yeah. Well, and we've noted already in earlier episodes how seems like every gospel, when they go to the synagogues, there's some demon-possessed person in the synagogue. And it's like, what's going on in the synagogues? And we talked, I think, last episode or one before that about how Jesus was having to cast out demons in synagogues, saying, well, the word's polluted. I'm having to bring the true message of God, not this distorted one that you've had. And that was what we were saying was also a setup for the Sermon on the Mount, right?
Well, and those two things are actually related, as we'll see with our next reading, the physical ailments and the spiritual ailment.
Yeah. And I just to talk about it for just a second longer. I mean, with the with the synagogues having a polluted message, a lot of times we don't get to hear what Jesus' solution is. We don't hear his message. It just says, and he went through the region preaching in their synagogues. And now with the Sermon on the Mount, I think you're going to see, oh, here's all the content of the, add up all the sermons that he's been doing. Here's his material.
Hmm.
So that's kind of cool. That's kind of a promising thing to look forward to here.
Yeah, it's an interesting difference. That's what, doing a harmony of the Gospels like this, where you're reading all the relevant readings, and sometimes they're in totally different. Even in the Synoptic Gospels, like one's in chapter 5 and one's in chapter 10. Sometimes,
Yeah.
because they all prioritize different things. Like John starts his gospel in the most philosophical way possible. Like thinking about the beginning of time, and Luke wants to start with with Mary and Joseph and Jesus' family, and Zechariah, John the Baptist, and all that, and Matthew, like you were pointing out, the first kind of public thing he really gets to is the Sermon on the Mount, like this synopsis of Jesus' preaching.
Yes, and he gives that summary that we've read as the introduction here to kind of summarize all the stuff we've just gone through in Mark and Luke and looking at the information that they have in a little more detail. But Matthew gives a summary of it and says, okay, here's all the things that are wrong that Jesus is everywhere he goes, he's restoring them. And those are the problems that we just listed, right? Disease and pain and demon possession, seizures and paralysis. And then you say, oh, well, why is that happening to the people? Like we talked about how the synagogues had demon-possessed people in them and the message was corrupted. Why are all the people sick? And then if you go back and see, go back to Deuteronomy 28, verses 58 through 62, it says, if you do not carefully follow all the words of this law, which are written in this book, and do not revere this glorious and awesome name, the Lord your God, the Lord will send fearful plagues on you and your descendants, harsh and prolonged disasters, and severe and lingering illnesses. He will bring on you all the diseases of Egypt that you dreaded, and they will cling to you. The Lord will also bring on you every kind of sickness and disaster not recorded in this book of the law until you are destroyed. You who were as numerous as the stars in the sky will be left but few in number. Because you did not obey the Lord your God, just as it pleased the Lord to make you prosper and increase in number, so it will please him to ruin and destroy you. You will be uprooted from the land you are entering to possess.
I mean, especially at the end there, where it's God is taking an active role in like ruin and destroying them. I still see this as less of like a tit for tat kind of thing. So if you do not carefully follow all the words of this law and revere, the glorious and awesome name. I've mentioned before how I've come to like Psalm 19, which is all about the law. It's not necessarily the most comforting psalm, except that I look at it and it keeps saying, the law of the Lord is good, it's perfect, and it's like this is what's best for you. And it's easy for us to like shake our fist at the sky when things go wrong. God hates me, he's punishing me, and it's like, well, kind of, yeah. I mean, he says that even he's taking an active role, and like we've said before, he disciplines those whom he loves. But it's the same as when you have a kid, and you're like, if you jump off of that, you're going to get hurt. If you don't share with your friends, nobody's going to share with you. If you eat that cookie, you'll spoil your dinner. And it's like when they just do all the things they want to do anyway, and then everything doesn't work out the way they want, and everything you said comes true, then it's like, this is so unfair. It's like, no, it's not. I told you exactly what's going to happen. And we're the same way. We're the same exact way even as adults. We just get more sophisticated about it. God tells you, I made you. I made everything. Here's what's best for you. And you're like, well, I don't want to do that. He's like, well, it's not going to go well for you if you don't do it. I'm going to not do it anyway. And then it goes well. And you're like, God, why do you hate me? It's just he's giving you the manual. He built the thing and gives you the manual, and you just throw it out and do whatever you want with it. And then it falls apart.
Yeah. Oh, it came with a manual?
Yeah, that's what we're reading.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, you look at the different flavors of the Gospels. We've been talking about how John is different than the synoptics, and Matthew's different than Mark and Luke in this introductory material. and starting with this, and he has this big sermon that none of them have in its entirety. And so when you look at all this, you say, well, why is Matthew starting the way he is? And it's possibly because Matthew is writing to a crowd that he thinks his audience is more, from a Judaic background, that they're going to understand that Deuteronomy 28, 29, and 30 are basically the model that all the prophets used.
Yeah, and that's one way to
write,
look at
to write their material, right? It was 28. Hey, the law has curses, it has blessings, but it has curses. And then 29 is like everybody pledges to follow it, and then 30 is they don't follow it and they go into ruin, but they're going to come back and then they're going to be restored. Like everything's in those 3 chapters. And so I think Matthew is teeing it up here for the Sermon on the Mount, saying, okay, look, there's disease all through the promised land. Like, why would that be if it's the promised land? And it's because you're not following the covenant, right? It's just like the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord in Jeremiah. You can't just run into the temple and say, we're protected from our enemies. Well, you can't just say, I live in the promised land. I should be healthy and wealthy and fit,
Or it's like people today just sort of boil it down to, well, I'm saved,
Yeah.
Got baptized at summer camp one time, or,
Right. It's the same thing, yes.
As if it was like a one-time thing. Pastor Wolfman, who we've had on the show, he likes to make the point, like, it's not that you were baptized, like one time in 2012 or whatever. You are baptized.
Yeah.
And he says it's the same as if somebody asked me, "Are you married?" He's like, "Well, I was married."
Yeah.
In 2003. And like, no, you're still married. It's a relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a covenant.
Yeah, you're right. It's like if you say, "Oh, I'm baptized," I don't understand why my life is such a wreck because all the women that I sleep with, none of them want to stay with me.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, there's an incongruity here. Can you guess what it is? And it's the same thing here. Matthew's saying, okay, here's all the people. They turned to the Lord, and he brought them back to the promised land, and now there's disease everywhere.
Yeah.
And he's like, what does that mean?
I think now that we're talking about this, I think maybe what was at the forefront of Matthew's mind, like you're saying, writing to a Jewish audience, I think that he's thinking about Israel. The first thing he does is a genealogy, which Luke has one too, but he doesn't start with it, verse 1, like Matthew does. And then it's the choosing of the 12 disciples early on, which the reason there are 12 has to be like the 12 tribes of Israel, like Jesus is making a statement there. And then he does this and goes into this basically like a giving of the law almost.
Right, and it's not that this information is not in Mark and Luke, because like if you go look at Mark, he does the exact same thing, choosing the disciples, he preaches the kingdom, he drives out demons, he starts healing people. And we saw there, which was a really cool detail, is the first person he heals is Peter's mother-in-law. And we commented on that episode, it's just that the touch of Jesus' hand restored everything to perfection.
In order, yeah.
Everything was gone, and the first thing she wanted to do was serve, and we talked about that's exactly what happens with Isaiah and with Jeremiah. Yeah. Like, as soon as they were made whole, they were like, here am I, send me, like what? And
it's not like Mark is like anti-Semitic or something. He's,
right.
It doesn't seem to be the way he structured it, but that does kind of look like it with Matthew's gospel.
Yeah, Matthew's very, very directly, like right to it. Mark is more subtle. Here's a bunch of things that are happening, and but you still get the same information. And also that cool thing about how Jesus' presence and touch restores everything to the garden. It's like, boom, the way humanity was supposed to be. There's no illness in you because I just touched you, right? So it's like this presence of God, and we're going to see a lot of that in beginning of the Sermon on the Mount with the Beatitudes, where all the things that are messed up become right, just because God's present. And so there are implications, right?
Just as the curses were present all the way back in Deuteronomy, so are these blessings, and where he's fixing things and restoring things.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. And that, we're going to look at a little more Deuteronomy and see that in chapter 30 where it says things like that. Now, the implication was that Messiah, right, that Christ is God, right? He's here, and he can restore all things. And everywhere Jesus goes, we see this restoration of both the word and through his touch, that this changing everything. And so that was what was promised in Deuteronomy in chapter 30, verses 1 through 5.
When all these blessings and curses I have set before you come on you, and you take them to heart wherever the Lord your God disperses you among the nations, and when you and your children return to the Lord your God and obey him with all your heart and with all your soul, according to everything I command you today, then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes and have compassion on you and gather you again from all the nations where he scattered you. Even if you have been banished to the most distant land under the heavens, from there the Lord your God will gather you and bring you back. He will bring you to the land that belonged to your ancestors, and you will take possession of it. He will make you more prosperous and numerous than your ancestors. And so, even in the law, you already had the prediction of the exile.
Yeah.
So, like when Jeremiah is prophesying and everyone's like, we hate you. That's such a mean prophecy. It's like, it's just there. He didn't even say if. He said when all of the blessings and curses happen, and
Yes.
when you are scattered to the nations. Like it's
Well, that's why we have been saying all along through our entire study, once we got to the prophets, that all a prophet does is call you back to the covenant.
yeah.
Because
It's like
Deuteronomy is the covenant, right? That's the second giving of law. It's structured like a covenant.
it drives home again how one-sided the covenant is. Like God makes this whole covenant with them, makes all these promises to them, makes all these demands of them, like he saves and calls to obedience. And he says, if you don't do these things, bad things will happen. If you do them, good things will happen. And since I know you're not going to, even when that happens, I'll eventually call you back and gather you, you in and restore you. It's like, and then that's the one part that they ignored.
Yeah. Well, the mechanism that he gave them to make all that work, right, is mentioned twice in this passage here. One in verse 2, he says, "Who must return to the Lord, Caleb?"
You and your children.
Yeah, and of course that would be exactly what the Shema says. It's like the important thing is that you teach it to the next generation. It's not just enough to say, yeah, I know what the law is. I don't have to bother telling my kids about it because they enjoy life, and I don't want to weigh them down with all that nonsense.
Yeah.
It's like, no, if that's your attitude, then it's over already.
Kids are like, they're smarter than we give them credit for. They also have an innate sense of justice.
Yeah.
Especially boys, but I think girls too. Like my daughter will talk about that. We're watching a movie or something bad happens, and she's just like, if that guy did that, I would kill him. And it's like there's part of us in our 21st century sensitivities. We're like, no, you can't say that. It's like, well, actually, that's pretty much what God says.
Yeah.
Don't do that. And especially boys, they just want to be a knight and go plunge their sword into the bad guys or whatever.
Well, and then I said it was mentioned twice, the Shema, implied twice in here. And at the end of it, it says he would make them more prosperous and numerous than their ancestors were. Mm-hmm. If they do this, do what? If they start practicing the Shema again, right? If they start teaching the next generation, then things are going to take off, right? Mm-hmm. Things are going to be prosperous and good. But only then if you follow that. And so the people were returning to God, right? They were flocking to Jesus from a huge geographic area like we talked about because they saw there was restoration coming from him, restoration that wasn't coming from the other church leaders. I mean, they'd been there. They've been back in Jerusalem now for centuries, and things weren't getting better. They're getting worse. And so Jesus is like, no, we're stopping that right now. Here I am. But are they going to return, as the Shema says, with all of their heart, with all of their soul, right? And that's also what this passage said, all your heart and all your soul. So, I mean, there again, that's the Shema. So, looks like not only is this the Shema, not only is this Deuteronomy, and what you were just talking about, the prophets there a second ago, it's Jeremiah's message all over again, which is an inside joke if you've been listening. So Jeremiah 35:15 says, again and again, which we always tell everybody is Jeremiah's catchphrase, I sent all my servants, the prophets, to you. They said, each of you must turn from your wicked ways and reform your actions. Do not follow other gods to serve them. Then you will live in the land I have given to you and your ancestors, but you have not paid attention or listened to me.
Oh. Well, just as he predicted
Yeah.
in Deuteronomy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jesus has come.
Right.
He's the fulfillment of all of this. He's Messiah. He's King. He's God.
Mm-hmm.
But will they listen?
Well, I've read the book, but
Well, some people are at least coming to listen.
yeah, it's going to make a big difference.
All the way from Indiana, you said they were coming to listen.
Yeah, something like that. So, yes, Christ is there. He's come with his message. Of course, we still live in response to that message today. He's the God of second, third, and fourth chances. He's the God of again and again, right? Which is what Jeremiah was saying. He gets up early in the morning, as the Hebrew idiom says, and he prepares. He's waiting for us. He's ready to help us, but we don't listen.
Yeah.
And that's what this sermon's about, actually. It's not, this sermon, it's not as much about what you do. Like, they already knew what to do. Like, the Pharisees had drilled that into their heads, right? It's about how you do it.
Yeah, namely with all your heart and your soul, like we were just talking about.
Yeah, and it even ends, I mean, one of the cool things about the sermon, that he pulls it all together at the end with the parable about the building of your house on the sand or the stone.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, right there, he's saying it's about how you do it.
It's the Sermon on the Mount, and you build your house on the mount / on the on the rock.
Right. Yeah. So this is the setup, right? That Matthew's giving Jesus here in his account of the Sermon on the Mount. He's teeing the ball up for Jesus to drive it down the fairway. I actually got a Callaway hat back here on the. We usually have a Phillies or an Eagles hat back there, but it's Callaway.
I told you it worked out.
I forgot. I wore a different hat, and I was like, I don't have my Phillies or Eagles hat, but it's a golf analogy. So he's going to tee it up for him, and he's going to hit it down the fairway. And everywhere he goes, things are getting restored. And then here's his message in the Sermon on the Mount.
Which we're not going to do.
This is the introductory session, so we're going to leave you with a cliffhanger. But here's what we'll do. We'll give you the outline of the sermon and what we're going to be covering over the next many weeks. So here's my outline of how we're going to break it down. And these may not represent like a single lesson. That some of them might be broken up more. So part one here is going to be the Beatitudes in Matthew 5, 3 through 12. And I think what we'll see in here is this is the way things should be. And that's the promise of Messiah, right? He comes to restore things back to the way they should be. In the case of Jesus, he's God. And so, like we saw with Peter's mother-in-law, one touch from his hand, and things are the way they're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're going to look at in the Beatitudes. A lot of that's based on a book by Dallas Willard that I like called The Divine Conspiracy. So if you have that, you want to look at that, he has some pretty good material in there, but we're going to say some other things about the Beatitudes too. The next section would be salt and light in Matthew 5, 13 through 16. And I think that's a really cool message because it's sort of like, well, God can use you, not just that he can, he chooses to use you. I mean, that is the mode that God chooses. Mm-hmm. If we're not going to be salt and light to the world, then the message isn't going to go out.
Yeah.
Fortunately.
Well, that's why he called before teaching his message, he called apostles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so then the next section, the third section, is going above and beyond the law. And this is a long section. This will be multiple weeks, I think. In Matthew 5, 17 through 48, almost every one of these little sections starts with, you have heard that it was said. Mm. Well, yeah, it was written in the law, and that was Jesus' point. Like, okay, the law says this, But is that then you're going to use that as your bare minimum? You're just going to, if I jump over that hurdle, that's good. I accomplished the law.
He makes you realize that the 10 Commandments were all encompassing.
Mm-hmm.
You know that there's nothing left out. Because if you just take a Pharisaical approach, all right, don't commit adultery. Well, I haven't done that, so. And Jesus is like, well, have you ever looked at a woman lustfully? Well, I mean, everybody has.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, then you've broken it.
Yeah.
Because I've broken all of them then, if that's how they work.
And I think that's his point. His point is, I mean, it's like an eye for an eye is one of my favorite ones, because there it's like somebody poked my eye out. Okay, well, by the law, you can go poke their eye out. And so then you have to say, well, is that what you're going to go do? Jesus is saying, what if you didn't?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're well within your rights to go poke that guy's eye out. It's right there in the law. But what if you didn't? So you're going above and beyond the law now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a high calling right there. Go from non-escalatory, ethics to non-retaliatory ethics. And you're giving something up. You're saying, I want to poke your eye out, but I'm not going to do it, because even though you've already poked my eye out, I think you'll be a better person if I don't poke your eye out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. That is way different than just following the law, letter for letter, right?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of high calling we get from Christ there in the section 3. Section 4 is going to be the spiritual disciplines section. That's what I'm calling it. That's going to be long also, most of Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 24, and how you daily practice your faith. There's lots of stuff in there, the Lord's Prayer,
Mm-hmm.
Giving, things that are daily things you should be doing with your life, but how? How do you do them?
Then we have do not worry in the rest of Matthew 6, which is relying on God to provide.
Yeah. Turn to God for provision, right? And then you jump into chapter 7, or the 7th section that we're breaking it down in our outline. Do not judge. And that's where you turn to God for your decisions.
That's kind of related to, in a way, what you were just talking about with the eye for an eye thing.
Yeah.
You leave the judgment to God.
Mm-hmm. Then you got that was the 6th section. Then the 7th section in Matthew 7 through 12 is to turn to God for answers, right? This is the ask, seek, and knock famous section there.
And then the narrow gate in section 8, that's just 2 verses in Matthew 7, but it says that God's way is the only way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Straight and narrow path.
Yeah. And then you got the 9th section, a tree and its fruit. That's Matthew 7, 15 through 23. And in that one, you can't fake it, right? It's
what we've been talking about.
You are
pretty
who
much.
you are,
Yeah.
right? And you can't fake that because it's going to come out in your actions. But you also can't fake it because it talks in there about Jesus says, well, I didn't know you. You can't fake being friends with Jesus,
Yeah.
It's like you can't fake it with people either. And I think he's making both points in there. You can't fake it with people. You can't fake it with me either, right? So that's a tough one.
Yeah, and then the last section we have is the wise and foolish builders, which we've already referenced, right? Building your house on the rock or on the sand, which, again, encapsulates kind of everything that the sermon is about, which is how you do things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So coming out of all that, it's just that Jesus wants to be in relationship, with us, and he wants us to be in relationship with him and to do things for the right reasons.
It doesn't go the other way around. Like, if you do the right things enough, then he'll let you into the exclusive club.
Right. Yeah. It's the same as, like we said, he saves first and calls to obedience second. It's like, it's based on the relationship that we would want to do these things. It's not, if he hadn't saved us first, like that's why the 10 Commandments, as we've taught in our 10 Commandments series, begins with, I'm the Lord your God who saved you out of Egypt, right?
Well, it just, you think about it, it wouldn't work. Like, he can't demand well, go to Jerusalem and make sacrifices at the temple when they're slaves in Egypt. Like, well, Pharaoh will kill me if I try to leave.
Yeah.
So I can't even make it 1% of the way there. And when you're a slave to sin, it works the same way. He can't say, well, stop, drinking too much or lying all the time or whatever, and start following the law. I'm a slave to sin. I have to be saved out of it first.
Yeah, you're a slave to death also, right? Like, what's the justification everybody uses? Well, I mean, you only live once, and when they die here, it's over, and so better get what I can while I'm here. And those are all kind of valid if there is no afterlife, if there is no promise from God, But, I mean, they aren't valid. You could also live ethically even in the short time that you might live. Okay, I'm not saying, but they are what people use as a justification,
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So that's what we're going to talk about over the next several weeks. And the point is that Jesus had come. That's what Matthew was saying. He had come. He was bringing restoration, right? And he was bringing this message. And God had been bringing this message again and again.
Yeah.
Through even the Old Testament, but nobody was listening, right? We just saw in Deuteronomy, like the most, I don't want to read Deuteronomy. It's a boring Old Testament book.
It's already been done anyway. It's the second giving of the law. If we can skip anything, it's that, right?
Right. And then right there in it, it's saying, well, God wants to restore you. He wants you to return to him, and he'll make everything better than it ever was. And like what Jesus came and he said, I want to restore you to me and make everything better than it's ever been. And we're like, oh, what an amazing new message.
Yeah, so maybe sometimes.
This is the same message he's been bringing all over and over about every prophet. Jesus even has a parable about it, like with the
servants who
tenants.
steal the tenants, who steal the vineyard.
The wicked tenants.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, he keeps sending people to him. They keep killing him. Oh, I'll send the son. He'll respect the son. And they kill him. So anyway, so this is not new information, but it's great information.
Yeah.
And because we haven't been listening, because you may not have been listening, hey, it's a great time to start listening to it, right? Because that's the big question. Are people going to listen? Are you going to listen? So that leads right into our words of life takeaway, which is from Matthew 7:24.
Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock.
So we're about to begin that journey in this series.
Construction project.
Yeah. We're going to go work through the greatest sermon ever preached. And is again, the same question is, will you listen to the words of God? And then, will you build your house on the rock? He's Caleb and I'm Timothy. Thank you for listening to Bible discussions on Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. Please consider subscribing to our channel to help support our efforts. All scripture quotations, unless otherwise indicated, are taken from the Holy Bible, New International Version, NIV, copyright by Biblica Inc., used by permission of Zondervan, all rights reserved. Biblocus is a registered trademark. This program is copyright 2026 by Timothy Klingerman. God bless all of you.